When Harry and Meghan walked away from the palace, they promised the world they would build an empire. They spoke of independence, of creative freedom, of changing the world on their own terms. The Netflix deal was supposed to be their coronation, their proof that royalty was just a title, and real power came from Hollywood gold, $100 million. That was the number whispered in every headline, celebrated in every interview, held up as evidence that they had won. Was built on quicksand. What if the empire was collapsing before it ever truly stood? Insiders are now revealing something the Sussexes never wanted anyone to know. The money is running out. The empire is crumbling. And the Hollywood machine that once opened every door is now slamming them shut one by one. This is not a story about a couple struggling to find their voice. This is a story about what happens when ambition collides with reality, when promises meet production costs, and when the people who built you up decide you are no longer worth the investment. To understand how it all fell apart, you have to go back to the beginning. Long before the Netflix logo appeared on their production company letterhead, long before the documentaries and the Polo series, Harry and Meghan were two people with a plan but no path. They had left the royal family, they had burned the bridges, they had made their stand. But standing alone in California with security bills piling up and no income stream, they needed someone powerful enough to believe in them. Like someone willing to bet big. But here's the real question. How did two people with zero production experience land a deal worth 9 figures? Sources say the Netflix deal did not come together through Harry's connections or Meghan's Hollywood experience. It came together through intermediaries, through people who knew people, through whispered conversations in private rooms where deals are born long before contracts are signed. Word from those familiar with the negotiation suggests that Netflix was not chasing the Sussexes. The Sussexes were chasing Netflix. And the people who made that introduction, the ones who opened the door and whispered the right names into the right ears, they were promised something in return. Gratitude, loyalty, a seat at the table when the empire was built. Those close to the early negotiations claim there were others involved, people whose names never appeared in press releases, but whose influence shaped every step. People who knew how to position two royals as content gold mines. People who understood that the real value was not in what Harry and Meghan could create, but in what audiences wanted to watch them confess. This is where the story shifts from ambition to betrayal. So who helped them secure the impossible? And more importantly, what happened to those people once the ink dried on the contract? According to insiders, there were key figures who helped craft the Sussexes' pitch to Netflix. Advisors who shaped their narrative, who told them what to say, how to frame their story, which emotional beats to hit. These were not just agents or publicists. These were architects who understood that in Hollywood, your first impression is your only chance. Sources say these advisors worked tirelessly. They prepped Harry and Meghan for meetings. They coached them on language. They helped build the foundation of what would become their content strategy. They made the Sussexes look like a sure bet. And once the deal was signed and the money started flowing, Harry and Meghan reportedly did what they have done before. They stopped returning calls. They cut ties. They acted as if they had done it all themselves. Those who helped build the bridge were left standing on the other side, watching as Harry and Meghan walked into Netflix headquarters alone, taking credit for a deal they could never have secured without guidance. Word from Hollywood circles suggests this betrayal did not go unnoticed. In an industry where relationships are currency, burning the people who helped you is a dangerous game. And those advisors did not stay silent. They began talking. Not to tabloids, not to press, but to other industry insiders, quietly letting it be known that working with the Sussexes comes with a cost. That gratitude is not something they understand. That once they get what they need, loyalty disappears. This was not jealousy. This was recognition. People in Hollywood saw the pattern and started keeping their distance. As whispers of financial trouble began spreading through entertainment circles, the reactions split in two very different directions. Want to know how Netflix executives really feel about their $100 million mistake? Inside Netflix, sources say there is a quiet divide forming. Some executives reportedly still believe the Sussexes have untapped potential, that with the right creative team and tighter oversight, they could deliver content worth the investment. These executives point to the initial success of the documentary series, the global attention it generated, the headlines it commanded. They argue that controversy sells, and the Sussexes are walking controversy. But other voices at Netflix are growing louder and far less forgiving. Insiders claim these executives see the Sussexes as a financial liability. They point to the Polo series that nobody watched. They mention the children's content that went nowhere. They whisper about production budgets that ballooned while creative output shrank. These are the executives who reportedly wanted the deal scaled back or terminated entirely, but were overruled by leadership unwilling to admit a mistake this public. And caught between these two positions is Ted Sarandos, the Netflix co-CEO who championed the deal from the beginning. Sources say he is now in an impossible position. If he cuts ties with the Sussexes, he admits Netflix made a catastrophic miscalculation, keeps funding projects that fail. He risks shareholder fury and board scrutiny. Meanwhile, back in England, the palace watches with something close to satisfaction. Word from royal insiders suggests King Charles and Prince William are not intervening, not offering help, not extending olive branches. They are simply waiting for the Hollywood dream to collapse under its own weight. Waiting for the moment when Harry realizes that independence without infrastructure is just isolation with better weather. But here's what most people don't know. Where did all the money actually go? The financial problems run deeper than failed projects and underwhelming viewership. According to those familiar with the Sussexes' business operations, there are darker whispers emerging about how money has been managed since the Netflix deal was signed. The first whisper involves production budgets that allegedly do not match the content delivered. Sources claim that projects budgeted in the millions somehow result in output that looks underfunded and rushed. Questions arise about where the money goes, who controls it, how much is absorbed by overhead and administrative costs before a single frame is shot. Insiders suggest the Archwell production infrastructure is bloated and inefficient, burning through cash while producing little of value. The second whisper is even more troubling. Did Harry and Meghan make themselves unemployable? Word from industry circles suggests that they have demanded creative control so absolute that experienced producers and directors refuse to work with them. These are not rumours of difficult personalities. These are claims of projects stalling because the Sussexes reject professional advice, ignore industry standards, and insist on creative choices that make content unreleasable. According to sources, Netflix executives have been forced to step in repeatedly, trying to salvage projects that should never have needed saving. And here is the third whisper, the one that makes Hollywood insiders shake their heads. Multiple people with knowledge of the situation claim that Harry and Meghan are impossible to satisfy financially. They allegedly demand top-tier budgets, but resist top-tier accountability. They want creative freedom, but refuse the professional discipline that freedom requires. And when projects fail, sources say they do not accept responsibility. They blame the system, blame the executives, blame the public for not understanding their vision. This creates a toxic loop where money pours in, but nothing of value pours out. To understand how this disaster was engineered, you need to understand the gatekeepers who made it possible. So who convinced Netflix to gamble everything on two untested producers? Two figures stand at the center of this story, the architects who opened doors that should have remained closed. The first is Ted Sarandos himself, the Netflix co-CEO, who reportedly saw the Sussexes not as content creators, but as cultural lightning rods. Sources say Sarandos believed that controversy equals attention, and attention equals subscribers. He did not need Harry and Meghan to make great television. He needed them to make headlines. And in that calculation, he was willing to overlook warning signs that other executives flagged early. People familiar with the deal claim that multiple Netflix executives raised concerns about the Sussexes' lack of production experience. They questioned whether a documentary about themselves was sustainable as a content strategy. They wondered aloud if the public would stay interested once the initial royal scandal faded. But Sarandos reportedly pushed forward, convinced that the Sussexes' name recognition alone justified the investment. He was betting on brand, not talent, on fame, not ability. And that bet is now falling apart. The second architect is someone whose name appears less frequently, but whose influence runs deeper. Insiders point to the agents and managers who structured the deal, who negotiated terms that heavily favoured the Sussexes up front, while backloading Netflix's protections. These deal makers allegedly crafted a contract that paid the Sussexes enormous sums for vague deliverables, giving them money and power without the accountability that usually comes with either. Word from those familiar with entertainment contracts suggests the Netflix deal was structured in a way that benefits the Sussexes even when they fail. They get paid for projects in development, not just projects delivered. They receive overhead allowances that cover lifestyle costs disguised as business expenses. They were handed a kingdom without having to prove they knew how to rule it. What makes this situation truly dangerous is not what the public knows. It is what industry insiders are quietly documenting. What happens when Hollywood keeps receipts on every broken promise? According to sources close to Netflix's leadership, there is a growing file of evidence detailing exactly how and why the Sussex deal failed. This is not gossip. This is documentation. Emails tracking budget overruns, production reports showing missed deadlines and abandoned concepts, meeting notes recording creative disputes and refused compromises, viewership data proving that audience interest in Sussex content is plummeting. Industry insiders say this evidence is being compiled not for public release, but for internal protection. If the Sussexes attempt to blame Netflix for the deal's failure, if they claim they were unsupported or sabotaged, Netflix reportedly has the receipts to tell a very different story. A story of a company that bent over backward to accommodate two clients who could not or would not deliver. But the vault of secrets extends beyond Netflix. Sources in Hollywood claim that other studios and production companies have been quietly sharing information about the Sussexes, warning each other through back channels about what happens when you work with them. These whispers include stories of production staff quitting mid-project, allegations of unreasonable demands and last-minute changes. Claims that the Sussexes' perfectionism is not about quality, but about control. Word from those familiar with Hollywood's inner workings suggests that Harry and Meghan are developing a reputation that no amount of royal glamour can overcome. They are seen as high-risk, low-reward clients, people who cost more than they are worth, And in an industry where reputation is everything, that perception is a death sentence. And now we reach the final moment, the point where everything converges into an inevitable reckoning. How long can you survive when every door is quietly closing? Harry and Meghan stand at the edge of a financial cliff they spent years pretending did not exist. The Netflix deal that was supposed to prove their worth is instead exposing their limits. The Hollywood empire that was supposed to replace royal privilege is crumbling before it was ever truly built. And the people who could save them, the industry, insiders, the advisors, the executives, they are all stepping back. Not because they cannot help, but because they have learned that helping the Sussexes means being used and discarded. Sources say the end is coming faster than anyone expected. Netflix is reportedly preparing to let the contract expire without renewal. Other studios are declining meetings. Agents are quietly suggesting the Sussexes focus on smaller projects, lower budgets, realistic expectations. This is the language of an industry saying goodbye, and the Sussexes feel it. Word from those close to them suggests panic is setting in. Desperation is replacing confidence. The realization is dawning that they bet everything on a hand they did not know how to play. Because in Hollywood, unlike in royalty, your title does not protect you. Your last name does not guarantee success. And when the money runs out, the kingdom collapses. What Netflix knows, what the industry knows, what everyone except Harry and Meghan seems to understand is that this was never about whether they could make good content. It was about whether they could survive without the institution they spent years attacking. And the answer is becoming clearer every day. They cannot. The fairy tale they tried to write for themselves is ending. Not with a happily ever after, but with empty bank accounts, expired contracts, and the slow, humiliating realization that independence is only freedom if you can afford it. And Harry and Meghan are discovering that the cost of their empire is more than they ever calculated. The money is running out, the doors are closing, and the people who watch them burn every bridge are now watching them drown in the consequences. Subscribe to Royal Unfiltered for more such content. Thanks for watching.